The next time a pure pool swimming coach or master's mate tells you, "Ew, you swim like a triathlete," I want you to respond back immediately, "Good, that's because that's what I am." The same applies if you identify mainly as an open water swimmer. To paraphrase Alistair Brownlee, double Olympic Gold Medalist in triathlon, swimming for triathlon is very different from swimming in a pool. You don't want the perfect stroke because you're not swimming alone in a pristine pool lane. You're being bashed around, beaten up, thumped by waves. Now that's not to say there's not an ideal stroke for triathlon and open water swimming. There is. Or that focusing on technique is no longer important. It is. It's very important. Just that most people's idea of a perfect stroke is often based on what they will see with the best pool swimmers in the world. Here at Swim Smooth, we believe that brilliant triathletes like Alistair Brownlee and Lucy Charles-Barkley are successful because of their technique, not despite it. Alistair's longtime swim training partner was Harry Wiltshire, who was the very first swimmer I ever started coaching in 1999. By 2011, Harry was one of 3 candidates to try to qualify as a domestique for Alistair and his younger brother Johnny in the 2012 London Olympics. As part of the selection process in 2011, some of you will remember the incident that year at the European Triathlon Championships in Pontevedra, in which Harry was banned for 6 months after an altercation with Javier Gomez from Spain during the swim and at the exit into T1. To this day, and regardless of your own position on the matter, conjecture remains as to whether he was instructed to do what he did or whether he embellished things and went a little rogue. Nonetheless, the ban scuppered his chances of racing at the Olympics the following year. Harry did, however, serve his time and in 2016 led Jan Frodeno out of the water in first place at the Hawaii Ironman World Championships in a blisteringly quick 48 minutes flat. The funny thing is, this video clip of Harry has been used during coach education courses for thousands of coaches in the UK over the last decade, and yet the one remark is always, "Yeah, but he'd be so much better if he just looked a little smoother." Interestingly enough, both Alistair and Johnny were told the same by a visiting swim guru from the USA in 2011 too. Just taking a cursory read on the comments on Lionel Sanders' latest YouTube video about the work he's about to embark on with his own swimming, my deep concern is that a lot of the armchair pundits would equally have Lionel trying to make his stroke look prettier. And whilst I'd agree that efficient swimming requires an efficient technique, the point here is that what people consider to be efficient based on how it looks is nothing to do with what is truly effective in the open water. If I had my way with Lionel, I'd ensure he's doing and plenty of, not so much, and definitely not. Joking aside, you see Alistair, Jonathan, Harry, Lucy, Chelsea, Anne and Leander might not look pretty, but you'd be hard pressed to question their effectiveness. And yet seemingly we still do. Today we'll look through 4 key points that you can take from the video analysis and coaching I have done with 4 Ironman World Champions, Lucy Charles-Barkley, Chelsea Sodaro, Annie Haug and Leander Cave, to help you become a little more proud to swim like a triathlete or indeed an open water swimmer. But first, let me tell you a little story of woe. This week, I took a lady for a session in the pool who was swimming with a stroke rate of around 42 strokes per minute and taking over 3 minutes to complete each 100. She was swimming with a full catch-up, as you can see here, totally coming to a complete stop between strokes. I asked her why, and she simply told me,
"But you know what? I learned it on a YouTube video this time."
I know you did. Yeah. And fun enough, this is exactly why I'm asking you these questions. Because I can tell exactly where you've learned this, but equally why it's actually the thing that's holding you back.
But it were professional swimmers who showed that. Okay.
The same story goes here for David in Montenegro just the other week. Let's look at his analysis now.
This is what I want you to look at right now. We're going to look at this from the bird's eye view in a moment, but what I'm drawing a line over here is your right hand, and I want you to watch how your left hand actually catches up. So they're doing this. Now, you will have been taught to do that when you've watched the YouTube video with that. I'm going to potentially show you now how that might not be super efficient. Okay, all right. So watch this. Sometimes people almost get allured, if you like, by the idea of efficiency when they're swimming. And many people talk about the idea that you have to make your stroke as long as possible to be as efficient as possible and take as few strokes as you possibly can. But water is 800 times more dense than air. And if you pause at any point within the stroke, you're going to decelerate and slow down at that point. So watch this here. As your left hand is out in front of the head, these two hands get very, very close to actually catching each other up. So this left hand is not pulling through. The right one is over the top of the water, so that one can't be moving forwards. And at this point in time, we've got a little bit of a dead spot where we're decelerating and slowing down. Let me show you a contrast. So I'm going to show you two Olympic swimmers here. The first one we've already seen, female swimmer, and then we're going to look at a guy as well. So Rebecca makes swimming look very easy, very efficient, very effortless. It looks beautiful and smooth. But we're going to see a very stark difference to what you're doing here on the left hand side. Watch this. Let's go from the bird's eye view. Now, it's true to say that there should always be one hand in front of this yellow line. People refer to it as front quadrant freestyle. But watch how she's clearly pulling through with this left arm way before the right one joins it in the water. You see the difference in the timing between her stroke and your stroke.
So that is to say, then she goes earlier.
Exactly right.
And you know what I saw on the internet? That's completely different.
Yeah, completely different, yeah.
Okay.
This is all in stark contrast to the excellent commentary at last weekend's 2023 Hawaii Ironman World Championships, which centered on Lucy's incredibly high stroke rate of nearly 100 strokes per minute. The commentators, including triple Ironman World Champion Mirinda Carfrae from Australia, marvelled at Lucy's rhythm and how it drove her momentum through the roof to exit the water over 90 seconds ahead in 49 minutes and 36 seconds and go on to a wire-to-tape win in a new world record time of 8 hours 24 and 31. She was swimming nothing at all like David had learnt from YouTube. One would think that if Lucy's stroke rate was so wasteful of energy that there's no way she would be able to do another 8 hours of high-intensity exercise without stopping. And yet she did, and with a degree of poise and finesse never before seen on that course. It was simply amazing. So now let's consider one tip from each of these amazing Ironman World Champions. Lucy from 2023, Chelsea 2022, Anne from 2019, and Leander from 2011, that you can use to improve your next open water swim or triathlon. Let's start by looking at Lucy, who won in 2023 with a swim split of 49.36. When I first met Lucy and her now husband Reese in 2015, it was really interesting to see the difference in their respective strokes, both being elite swimmers. Reese was a classic smooth with a long, slow stroke, high elbows and a very strong kick, whereas Lucy was a classic swinger with a much shorter, punchier stroke and with the ability to switch and change between a 2, 4 and 6 beat kick purely at will. Lucy often regales how whilst Reese is a lot faster in the pool and particularly over shorter distances, whereas she's a lot better in the open water and over longer distances. This is really interesting given, on face value, one might assume their stroke techniques would suit the opposite. But what impressed me most about Lucy's swimming at the 2023 Hawaii Ironman World Championships was the versatility she'd now built into her stroke. Lucy's old pool swimming coach, coincidentally my best man at my wedding, Roy Shepherdson, had always encouraged Lucy to breathe bilaterally to balance out her stroke. But Lucy freely admits that she often ignored this, which she now believes led to injury issues on the bike and run due to years of imbalance by breathing only to her right.
But if you look at the position there, very, very good indeed. Like catch and pull through. Every now and again, there's a little, just watch it here. See that slight flick out of the hand, look?
Yeah.
As you're going to take a breath in. So that hand from the top, in a moment, we're actually going to see that hand actually turning out like this. Most people do that, but it ends up collapsing the elbows to do so. So on that one particular stroke, if that hand was actually the same as the previous one, let's just get one of those previous ones there, where it doesn't actually turn out anywhere near as much, and consequently you get a much better hold of the water. And the thing with this is that when somebody's actually only then breathing, let's say for example you were only breathing every 2 strokes to the right hand side, you'd be doing that 50% of the time. So the hand would be flicking out 50% of the time, and that's quite a margin of error.
Yeah, and I'd say, I would breathe every 2, or more likely more, to be spotting anything like that.
Absolutely,
so probably I'm doing it a lot more.
Exactly, yeah. And mainly to the right, or?
Yeah, I pretty much only breathe to the right.
To the right. That's Alistair there, that's Jonathan Brownlee, that's Harry Wiltshire. Watch which side they all breathe to.
They're all going to the left. Is that because the rope is
exactly
on the
right?
left? Yeah.
That's exactly right. Now, but the rope is more likely to be on the left than on the right. On most triathlon and open water events around the world, it's standard to go anti-clockwise rather than clockwise around the course. So it's a distinct advantage to be able to breathe to the left rather than to the right. When you breathe only to your right hand side on a left-hand turn course, typically you end up drifting to the right, away from the course.
Yeah.
If you're breathing to your left, I went around the entire course of the weekend only breathing to the left. I was basically just trying to copy what Alistair would have done in that situation. And the point I'm trying to raise, I guess, for yourself is that it's totally fine to breathe to the right hand side, but on a left-hand turn course, you can be at a bit of a disadvantage.
In last week's race, you can clearly see Lucy mixing up her breathing to the left, which she used to tactically sight off the media boats on her left-hand side to help keep her straight when she was off the front by herself. So, tip number 1, use bilateral breathing to balance out and improve the tactical versatility of your stroke, even if this means you spend much of your time only breathing to one side, and that's okay. Oh, and another quick tip, why not smash that like and subscribe button right now to continue receiving content like this from us? It really helps us a lot. Now let's look at Chelsea, who won in 2022 with a swim split of 54 minutes and 48 seconds. Let's start off by hearing from Chelsea as she discusses how the work we did last year on reducing the necessity to overkick by ensuring that she maintained a higher cadence in her stroke allowed her to get out of the swim in a much fresher state.
I had been in Mallorca before Hamburg. Dan's really good friend, Paul Newsome, happened to be there. And Paul took the time to do a session in the pool with me. And we realized that I had been kicking way too much during the swim. And so when I would start the bike leg in my previous races that season, I was totally gassed, I had no power. And so we sorted that out a bit. And when I got to Hamburg, I finally felt good when I got on the bike. Yeah. I was seeing these splits and just, when you're seeing positive feedback on your bike computer and on the course, it just makes you more and more motivated.
In this pool a couple of years ago, I was working with Lucy Charles. She can kick like this, but she kicks like this when she's racing. Yeah. She's got a stroke which could look a lot longer and smoother like yours does over here, but she doesn't swim like that. She swims like this because it's the optimal way for her to swim. But with that instruction to slow the stroke rate down a little bit, you've by and large lengthened out the stroke and brought some of this leg kick in. And I think that might tally up with why you're feeling maybe in the first 5 or 6 Ks on the bike. Yeah. While we're maybe just sort of a bit cooked at that point.
It really is incredible. And you did mention Paul Newsome. Big shout out to Paul. He does get swimming, especially when it's specific to triathlon and open water. Looking through your performances and your results before this show, it's incredible to see your swim times suddenly accelerate from Mallorca onwards.
So, tip number 2, avoid overly lengthening your stroke, thinking that because you're taking fewer strokes per lap, you're working less hard. You're not necessarily, and maybe over-engaging your leg kick like Chelsea was. Okay, so let's take a look at Anne now, who won in 2019 with a swim split of 54 and 9 seconds. Like Lucy and Chelsea, Anne's favourite breathing side is her right. She had developed quite an asymmetric looking arm recovery action over the top of the water, looking like Lucy and Harry with her left arm, and more like Reese, Lucy's husband, on the right with a classic higher elbow recovery. Let's listen to a short snippet from the analysis with Anne, where we discuss these varying arm recovery styles and how they in turn can link to the acceleration of the arm over the top of the water, thereby influencing your stroke rate.
You can obviously see the major difference between this left arm recovery over here on this left hand side versus what we're doing on the right-hand side, which looks almost like your classic high elbow recovery freestyle on that right-hand side, almost like you're trying to swim with that elbow really quite high on that side. Now, most conventional pure pool swimming coaches would actually sort of say that this doesn't look anywhere near as efficient as what you're doing here on the right-hand side, because the right-hand side looks more like your classic stroke. If I just bring some video footage in here, this is dual Olympic gold medalist Rebecca Adlington and former world record holder in the 800 freestyle. In the bottom frame, we have Anna Karin. Now, Anna Karin went to the 1988 Olympic Games as a pure breaststroker at that point, as opposed to freestyle. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner, we'll bring up the very first guy I ever started coaching. He's a guy called Harry Wiltshire, who's one of the WHO athletes over here. And you know Harry at all? Or
yeah.
You know, yeah, okay. So he's obviously got the reputation for being called Dirty Harry with some of the issues there. But that's aside. We're just looking at this purely from technique, not from casting any aspersions about their personality or anything like that.
I was in Pontivy, tried that race.
Say again, sorry, you were at that race, were you? Yeah, okay, so you probably know the history.
I know the story.
You know the story more than me anyway. So what we're going to look at though is obviously Rebecca Adlington here over the top of the water. She's got your classic high elbow recovery. It looks very nice, it looks very smooth. Fingertips almost just trailing over the surface of the water. And that's probably the primary difference in your stroke between the left and the right, is the clearance on the left versus the clearance on the right hand side. Now obviously swimming in the pool when it's flat and calm like this, either of these two styles are valid, because it's flat and it's calm, you don't have to lift the hand very high. Down in the bottom left-hand picture here, Anna Karin, she'll see her arm recovery action looks a lot more like your left arm recovery action. It doesn't look as pretty as Rebecca Adlington, but we find that this is actually a much better and more effective way to swim in the open water. The obvious reason being because of clearance of the hands over the surface of the water. But when it comes to wearing wetsuits and stuff, and even obviously with the latest technology, no matter how flexible they are in the shoulder, you're still working against that neoprene when you're trying to force the elbow high, like we have with Rebecca up in the top here. Now, when I first started coaching Harry, everyone said to me, you've got to check out this guy. He's got a really interesting looking stroke. If you could just make him look a little bit smoother, you'll make him faster. So I saw a stroke very much like what he's got here, and it looks a bit wild, it looks a bit rangy, etc. But every time I tried to slow him down, lengthen out the stroke, and get him essentially to look more like Rebecca or more like you look on your right-hand side, it just simply slowed him down. I guess my first bit of coaching experience was to not necessarily mess with somebody if it doesn't need to be messed with. So over the years, we've sort of endorsed Harry's style. You notice he breathes primarily to his left-hand side. Most of the races that he'll do with the ITU, etc., tend to be on the left-hand turn course. When we drop in, we've got this beautiful bit of video footage here, look, of Alistair. We've got Alistair at the front, again with more of like your left arm recovery over the top of the water. Jonathan Brownlee down in second position here, again with that straight arm recovery, and then Harry in third place with almost like a perfect windmill. So I guess the point that I just want to start off with is that, if we're sort of looking at the asymmetry with the view of maybe actually balancing out the stroke, I'd actually be more in favour of developing your right side to look more like your left than your left side to look more like the right in the context of your swimming stroke. That would be my first point. And the reason I wanted to flag that is that it's very easy to sort of say, oh, but it looks so much more controlled on the right hand side. I actually love what you're doing on your left hand side. I love it. I don't hate what you're doing on the right hand side by any stretch of the imagination, but I love what you're doing on that left hand side. So that's really my first point on that. Even then, some of the work that we've done with Lucy Charles as well. Lucy has a stroke which is very befitting of an Alistair Brownlee as opposed to an Andy Potts. And again, a lot of it comes back to the fact, her background is open water swimming. She was a good pool swimmer, but she really excelled in open water swimming, and obviously now excelling in triathlon. The video work that we've done with her, and I've never tried to change her stroke, I've almost been trying to promote the fact that what she's doing, even despite coaches maybe saying, oh no, Lucy, you'd be so much better if you lengthened, glided more and kicked harder, I don't believe she would be better. And she is obviously very, very good indeed.
I think open water is so much different, especially if you're swimming in a pack and you're fighting in the pack. If you have the perfect high elbow recovery phase, other people will bunch you up, and the straighter your arm is, the more resistance you have against the others, and you more,
that's right.
You can use the power to efficiently, you're
Absolutely.
like a windmill and use the acceleration of your hand as well.
So, tip number 3, worry less about what your arm recovery looks like over the top of the water and more about what you're doing with it underneath the water. Finally, now let's look at Leander Cave, who won in 2012 with a swim split of 56 and 3 seconds. Leander actually lived with me in Bath in the UK in 2001 as part of the British World Class Triathlon programme. 4 years later, and a full Olympiad worth of time spent studying the mechanics of efficient freestyle for triathlon and open water, Leander was part of a guinea pig group along with Olympian Michelle Dillon when I sat a practical interview to become the head coach of the University of Bath high performance team. The humble Finese tempo trainer had just been released at this stage, and I was using it intensely to work on developing cadence and rhythmical fluidity in a triathlete stroke. Much of what I had observed working with Harry way back in 1999 was now capable of being translated effectively to the swimmer by way of a series of audible beeps, allowing me to form the first protocol for a stroke rate ramp test. During the interview for the head coach's position, which I didn't get by the way, I worked intensively with both Leander and Michelle on their swimming with the tempo trainer. Leander loved it so much that I gave her one of mine to take away with her, and if you look very closely at this footage from 2012, you'll see that now all too familiar faint beeper outline in her swim cap. Pretty cool, eh? So tip number 4, work to identify your optimal stroke rate, and remember that when you're in the open water, it's the only metric that makes any kind of sense as a measure of pacing and consistency when factors like wave, swell, current, chop, and thousands of other swimmers jumping on top of you just aren't known. It's the one metric I personally monitor in all my open water swims, and I hope it will help you too. Thanks for watching, and here's to swimming like a triathlete or open water swimmer. Don't be afraid to do so.